And thank you very much for joining us once again here on PM Express. My guest tonight is the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. He is Samuel Abu Jinapo. I'm pretty sure you've heard. There's a lot of conversation around the Achimota lands. The allegation is that it has been sold. He did a press conference yesterday to clarify that, but there are more questions that we want to seek clarification to for you. We'll also talk about the Bulgarian embassy incident. The sole inquiry was set up by him. The report is out. He will talk about that. And of course, you remember that big explosion at Peti. We'll have a conversation with him also. And a few other things that we'll talk about tonight. Thank you very much, Mr. Abu Jinapo, for your time on PM Express again.
Evans, thank you for having me, and a very good evening to your cherished viewers. Very happy to be here. So
yesterday, it started trending on social media that you have sold the Achimota forest. Have you sold the Achimota forest?
We have not sold the Achimota forest. We certainly will not sell the Achimota forest. It will be totally preposterous for a government that is engaged in aggressive afforestation and reforestation to contemplate selling the Achimota forest, let alone step forward to sell the Achimota forest. In fact, there's not even an issue of sale here. There's no sale which is taking place in any form or shape. It's very much like all governments in the past, and as it's become the custom, the pre-acquisition owners of this forest reserve, the Owu family, have had some lands released to them. That's exactly what has happened. The Achimota forest has not been sold.
So released to them because the land was originally theirs?
Yeah, the lands were acquired. There were two acquisitions, the 1921 acquisition and the 1927 acquisition. The 1921 acquisition was the land acquired for purposes of constructing the Achimota school. The 1927 acquisition was the land which was acquired as an extension of the Achimota school. In 1930, the colonial government designated the 1927 acquisition as a forest reserve for purposes of plantation for fuel for the Achimota school, and which is what has become the Achimota forest, the 1927 acquisition, which was converted in 1930 as a forest reserve. In the 1921 acquisition, compensation was paid. The 1927 acquisition, there's no evidence of payment of compensation. In addition to that, not all of the land was used as Achimota forest, as we know. A lot of it has been encroached upon. For instance, Gimpa, as we know it today, is within the 1927 acquisition. The Forestry Commission headquarters is within the 1927 acquisition. The Earthquake Monitoring Center is within the 1927 acquisition. So is the Forestry Commission accommodation facilities in the 1927 acquisition. And private individuals have also been engaged in developments within the 1927 acquisition. So sometime in 2007, the Owu family petitioned the president of the time, President Kufuor, on two grounds. The first ground being that compensation had not been paid for the 1927 acquisition. And the second ground is also that the land is being used, part of the land is being used for purposes which is at variance with the original purpose for which it was acquired. And as you know, the constitutional provision, specifically Article 20 of the Constitution, makes a pronouncement on that. And therefore, some of the land, the unused part of the land, be returned to them. The matter is traveled to President Mills, President Mahama, where even in President Mahama's time, three leases were executed in favor of the Owu family, and all the way through. And this government is giving effect to the arrangements which were made by amending the Cap 157, which is the Forest Act of 1927, to de-gazette the peripheral portions of the Achimota forest, the part which is not being used as a forest reserve, for the Owu family.
So for clarity, are you giving the entire forest back to them? Because
no, we're not giving the entire forest back to them. We're giving the peripheral portions of the Achimota forest to them. The Achimota forest will remain intact. As a matter of fact, we are in the process of reforesting the Achimota forest. We've been planting trees in the Achimota forest. Money has been voted for the reforestation of the Achimota forest. And we intend to even do more, in hopefully in the not too distant future, turn the Achimota forest into a forest enclave in the likes of Hyde Park in London, Central Park in New York. So on the contrary, we are seeking to preserve the Achimota forest. And both instruments, the EI 144 and EI 155, were all promulgated solely and specifically with provisions to protect the Achimota forest. So on the contrary, the Achimota forest is not being sold. It cannot be sold, and President Akufo-Addo will never sell the Achimota forest.
EI 144 is entitled the cessation of forest reserve, correct?
Yes.
That is what many saw, and rightly so, then interpreted to mean that the entire Achimota forest ceases to be sold. You say just a part of it that is ceases to be sold.
But you have to read EI 144 together with EI 154. Whereas EI 144 de-gazette parts of the 1927 acquisition, which is the larger acquisition, as a forest reserve. EI 155 reaffirms that the Achimota forest remains a forest reserve. Now you will realize that the colonial governments, when they acquired these lands for these development, at the time land was available, they acquired large tracts of land. So if you look at the EI that acquired land for the construction of the University of Ghana, for example, you will find that it goes all the way to North Legon, into East Legon, and so on and so forth. So if somebody gets a lease in relation to, say, East Legon, and he wanted to get legal title, that instrument which acquired the larger portion of land, part of which no longer forms part of the University of Ghana, ought to be amended before he can get that title. So is it for Kolebu. The EI that acquired land for Kolebu, you will find that that EI, the schedule to the EI or the site plan of that EI is a bigger parcel of land than the Kolebu as currently constituted. That is the same matter we are referring to here. And so it is a bigger parcel of land which was acquired, as I've been mentioning to you, which Gimpa is part of it, which Forestry Commission is within that enclave, and so on and so forth. So there is, it's not a question of de-gazetting Achimota forest to be given to Owu family. No, it is a bigger acquisition, 1927 acquisition, which was designated in 1930 by Order 31 of the Forest Act of 1927, Cap 157, to de-gazette those portions as forest reserve in order for the Owu family to be able to give effect to the leases, some of the leases which were granted in 2013, and get legal title to those kinds of leases. So really the Achimota forest remains intact, no two ways about it.
In 2007, when under President Kufuor, the committee looked into it, they concluded that the Owu family was entitled to 90 acres. Under your watch, it is specified that they are now going to be given 361 acres of land. That is a significant increase in the acreage. Why is that?
Well, first of all, let me say that these information, I put them out. I'm the minister who put them out. And I said they should give the whole background. And I did so because it's supposed to be in accord with transparency, the utmost transparency. These records are in my bosom. I could have chosen to begin from 2011. I could have chosen to talk about President Kufuor's time and not give the acreage. I could have chosen to talk about President Mohammed's time and skew the facts and not give the acreage. But I put everything out because I always want to be absolutely transparent. That's point number one. Point number two, always remember that in President Kufuor's time, when you look at the statement carefully, the agreement was not executed. It was not executed because there was still contention as to what the Owu family were entitled to. And the Afaredati, Samuel Afaredati, who was the chief executive officer of the Forestry Commission, who was made to chair a committee by the then Minister for Lands, Honorable Mike Hammer.
This is under Mills or Jomama?
This is under Mills, I suspect. Yes. Went into the matter and made specific recommendations as to how much acreage the Owu family should be entitled to. So I've just been reviewing some of the documentation, and some of the reasoning I'm told is that the 147 acres for which 3 leases were signed, 147 or 200 plus or so, I'm not too sure, for which leases were signed in favor of the Owu family. You had a nursery school or so being part of it. You had the earthquake monitoring center being part of it, and those were the primers of the land. But because of the nature of those installations, they could not have been granted to the Owu family, and therefore alternate land ought to have been given to them, which was a lesser prime land also. And the committee then made those arrangements and scaled the acreages upwards. Everything I have done, I inherited it. The matters to do with the acreage, how much,
even the 361,
all of it
in the gazette.
All of it. We never made any determination about acreage. We never made any determination about whether they are entitled, whether what acreage they are entitled to, and so on and so on. All of those were inherited.
So who precisely
and those were
361 acreage?
And those were done by the Afaredati committee. those determinations were made by the Afaridate Committee.
Under the NDC, previous NDC regime.
Absolutely. And as I say, we have had to do was to amend the EI, the Forest Reserve EI, in order to de-gazette the part which had already been determined and agreed upon. Look, I hear people have raised a lot of issues about the acreage and all of that.
Isn't it too much?
I always say I come to these matters totally above board. We will take a look at it. That's what I can say for the time being. We'll take a look at it. If it's such a major issue, we will take a look at it. And the chips will fall where they may. I will have no difficulty. If I come to the conclusion that the acreage is too much, or any examination or interrogation were to come to the conclusion that the acreage is too much, we will act upon it. I mean, Evans, let me just say this and say this forcefully. And I say this with a lot of pride. I sit in this office working for the Ghanaian common interest, for the public good. President Akufo-Addo works for the public good. He works for the public interest. It is what is in Ghanaian people's interest and the common interest of Ghana, which always has to prevail. There's nothing to be hidden. There's nothing to be covered up. If it turns out that after all, the whole family should be entitled to 1 acre, so will it be. But as I said, we inherited this. We inherited this arrangement, and I didn't have any justifiable reason to impeach it or to jettison it. I didn't have any such grounds to do so, and I still don't. So the examination, interrogation, conversation can proceed, and the chips will fall where they may. But for the time being, as I say to you, what we had to do was really the de-gazetting, was the amendment, and we put in sufficient
based on the already determined acreage by the previous government.
Yeah, based on the already determined arrangements by successive governments.
And as far as the acreage was already determined before you came.
The information before me is that the Afaridate Committee is a committee that organized the full contours of what the old family were entitled to, and that is the report that came to me from the Forestry Commission, the Technical Directorate for Forestry here at the Ministry, and all of that. Not on one occasion was it a contradiction when it comes to the matter of acreage or what they are entitled to or whether they are entitled to it and so on and so forth. But isn't it interesting? The beginning of this story was that the Achimota forest was sold. Yes. That was the beginning. Now it's not the Achimota forest being sold. It's now the acreage. We will deal with that too. It shouldn't be a problem. The beginning of this whole controversy was that Mr. Jinapor, acting on the instructions of President Akufo, he sold the Achimota forest. Now, that somehow is totally lost in the debate. That has become comatose. That is dead. We are now having to be pushed to where another matter of acreage. We will examine all of that, but I can assure you that in all of these matters, we will come squeaky clean because we acted in good faith, we acted transparent, as we do in all matters.
Okay. So 2 quick clarifications. One, you're looking into the acreage consents.
Well, there's so much looking into it. The matters are before us. Some people have raised issues. I see the minority leader has issued a statement on it, so on and so forth. We will continue to look at the issues as they come up, and the matter of the acreage, we will continue to examine them. Let's hear what grounds others have to suggest that it is too much and impeach the work of this committee, which was formed under their own government. And if we are to come to the conclusion that we should do something about, why not? We'll do something about it. The most important thing, and I keep emphasizing on that, in these matters, we deal with them dispassionately and above board.
And secondly, I see in your statement that under John Mahama, there was 227 hectares that were also given out for some private development into an ecotourism. In fact,
that is not just 200 and something hectares. That is the Achimota forest.
Okay.
The Achimota forest was granted to Akins Capital by the Mahama administration.
For what exactly?
To develop it into an ecotourism park. An ecotourism park is essentially like a theme park, to more like level the forest and build a theme park there. And leases were granted to Akins Capital. We have had to come into office to decouple the two issues and say no, the ecotourism park is not something that we are persuaded by. So that we put a hold on it, so that the Achimota forest will be salvaged, will be saved. the Mahama administration. And look, I don't like to get into the realm where we politicize these things. We don't have to. Where everything is politicized, and which is what our friends are trying to do. It's not everything that should become a political game where we kick it here and there. But that's a fact. They granted the entire Achimota forest. President Mahama did two things. He said the portions which the Owu family are entitled to, give it to them. Then the Achimota forest, give it to a king's capital and let them develop an ecotourism. That's a matter of record.
Was that executed though?
Yes, leases were executed in their favor. It's not taken up because we are in office and we've not been persuaded by that move.
So have you
abrogated that's
that lease?
Well, not yet, but we haven't degazetted that portion of the forest as we've done for the Owu family. If I had done so today, a king's capital will walk into Achimota forest with bulldozers and run it down and build their ecotourism park.
Will you degazette it for them?
We will not do that. We will not do that because we want to protect the forest reserve. And as I say, our plan is to turn it into the likes of Hyde Park and Central Park, which is that plant more trees and let it be a proper forest reserve and let people be able to run through it, and you know what I'm talking about, you know. So that is a forest reserve. But the ecotourism park was essentially going to be like a theme park. But the point I'm making is that I am very reluctant to get into political equalization. They did this, we did that, they did that, they did that. Of course, it seems that they have an appetite for converting everything into politics. You talk about 90 acres under President Kufuor, which was not consummated, which was not concluded, the agreement was not signed, and yet under President Mahama, the acreage that was to be given to the Owu family was more than the 90 acres. So the question that will arise, why don't somebody ask the question that how come that the acreage went up from 90 to 100 plus under President Mahama? And as I say to you, the Afaridatic committee did all the work and made all the recommendations, which was accepted by President Mahama's government, and which is what we have given effect to.
Okay, so clarify for me. I think you mentioned another 100 plus under John Mahama, and that was that also Faridate?
That is yes, that was it. Those were the three leases, and as I say, I've just gotten a briefing on it. The whole transaction was to be done in two parts. The first part being releasing the land to them in three leases, which worked out to 147 acres or so, and the second part was going to be another set of leases, which was going to end up at 300 plus. But how much they were entitled to was determined at the time, and I inherited it. I didn't create it.
And finally, there's a suggestion and a concern finally about the acreage, which boils down to fear that politically exposed individuals will take advantage of this and annex that which has been degazetted now for their own selfish purposes. The suggestion is that individuals powerful in your government will take control of this for their own, selfish purposes. Is that something that you are concerned about?
Well, I'm not too sure how that is going to happen. How is that going to happen? The land is being given to the Owu family. Owu family is going to go and give it to politicians. And what happens to civil society activism? What happens to media watchdog? What happens to all the anti-corruption institutions and agencies who have to keep an eye on all of that and all of us? And if such a matter were to come up, that would be totally unfortunate and scandalous, and that should be exposed. And people who get themselves involved in that ought to be dealt with ruthlessly. And the principles, the age-old, time-tested principles of conflict of interest, all of us are having to be mindful of not getting ourselves into a situation of conflict of interest. So if there was any such situation, I will say, whether in a previous government or this government or any other government, that should be dealt with swiftly and ruthlessly.
I want to take a quick break. When I return, we'll talk about the Bulgarian embassy demolition, which is another issue the minority had raised. The minister set up a sole commission to look into it. The report is out. Are people going to take the fall for what has happened, what the sole commissioner found? After we will talk about the Apeti explosion. Stay with me. And thank you for staying with us. My guest is still the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Samuel Abu Jinapo. Mr. Jinapo, so you recently had reason to set up a sole inquiry, so to speak, into the demolition of the Bulgarian embassy. That report is out. Part of it suggests that the individuals behind the demolition, Dr. Yahweh Duan Poma and another individual that was mentioned, Jojo Hagan, may have acted in ways that were not entirely above board. One in acquiring of the license, etc. You've taken some action on the back of this. First, I want to get a picture of what is going to happen now, based on what you found.
Okay, so thank you very much, Evans. As you know, we all woke up to this Bulgarian embassy, Prohaha, and I took the view that it would be important to set up a framework to establish the incontrovertible facts, to assemble the facts, and it's all that you can take the correct, informed decisions. And so I sought audience with this distinguished, experienced judge, retired justice of the High Court, Justice Oforiata, and literally just pleaded with him to take up this assignment for me and for the government, and he graciously accepted to do the work. He's gone into the matter and he's presented his report, as you rightly pointed out. He's presented a 149-page report, which is very comprehensive, lucid, and deals with almost all the issues. He's made some findings and also made recommendations. On the basis of that, I'm taking steps to act on his report. I've put out a statement and I've put out the executive summary of the report, and essentially you're right in saying that it's asked that one Mr. Jojo Hagan be sanctioned for misrepresenting facts to the Lands Commission to get the Bulgarian embassy's title cancelled. So two fundamental recommendations were made by the sole inquirer. First is that Mr. Jojo Hagan should be sanctioned, and with that I've referred the matter to the Honorable Attorney General for his advice, and based on which I'll be able to take the next line
sanction.
of action.
What was his crime? What did he do wrong?
Well, what it is that he's supposed to have, according to the report, he's supposed to have litigated over the residual of the lease of the Bulgarian embassies and sought judgment against a third party and presented the judgment to the Lands Commission as though that judgment was between himself and the Bulgarian embassy. Okay, it was the parties in it were himself and the Bulgarian embassy, and that got the Lands Commission to cancel or withdraw the title of the embassy, and therefore the sole inquirer felt that was that is tantamount to fraudulent misrepresentation, and therefore he should be sanctioned. But in matters like this, you have to be advised by the Attorney General. So I've sent a request to the Attorney General for his advice. And then, of course, he says I should use my good offices to seek an amicable solution or resolution to the matter, which I'm taking steps to do. I'm going to meet the ambassador of Bulgaria to Nigeria with concurrent accreditation to Ghana. I'm going to meet the other parties, Mr. Hagan and his people, and hopefully we can mediate to find an amicable solution. By failing which, the sole inquirer himself determined that there are 3 pending cases before the courts. So failing which, I will abide by the outcome of the court cases. I'll wait for the determination of the court cases, and that obviously will be binding on all of us. In the meantime, I've put a moratorium, or I've put a freeze on any development of the property until these processes are exhausted. So this is where we are.
The minority issued a statement signed by your good friend Samuel Abu Jinapo, in which he accuses you of a cover-up. He says the president's appointed to the NDPC, Mr. Ampoma, is being shielded in this, although he is a key player in what had happened, and that because he is the president's friend, you are not touching him, and that the people at the Lands Commission who were also found to have also acted in conjunction with these 2 individuals also should be sanctioned. What do you say to that there's a cover because a president's friend is allegedly involved?
Well, I think the statement by my friend Honorable Kuchita Ablakwa, who is the ranking member for Foreign Affairs, is, to say the least, most unfortunate and irresponsible, totally irresponsible. I think a gentleman of his standing in the Ghanaian body polity should not degenerate into such baseless accusations. I think it's most unfortunate, and I don't mince words on that at all. I think the politicking and political motivation is leading him into the realm of total absurdity. Now, so having said that, question: the sole inquirer is the person who did this work. He is a former judge. He is an experienced retired judge. What is the suggestion? That I'm going to tell him that shield this person, don't shield that person, do this, don't do that person. Evans, all the people involved in this matter, the first time I heard of their names was when I read the report. I've never heard Jojo Hagan. I've never heard Ampoma. I've never heard the name Ampoma. I've never heard any the charge d'affaires, the consular general of the Bulgarian embassy. The first time I heard his voice was when he called me yesterday to try and book an appointment for.
But Dr. Yao Edu Ampoma is a president appointed to.
I don't know him. I don't know the president's appointed to NDPC. I'm just hearing this for the first time. Take it from me, on my honor. I'm just hearing that he's an appointee to NDPC for the first time. I don't know him from Adam. I don't know Hagan from Adam. I don't know the embassy man. I think my friend Ablakwa should try and rise about this. It's becoming ridiculous because every now and again, and these flimsy, wild allegations without any basis. What is the basis of the cover-up? That's what you should say. Mr. Ampoma is not being sanctioned. He should have been sanctioned because he did this, that, and that. He did A, B, C,
but his
D.
name was mentioned in the report, wasn't it? What was he alleged to have been done in the report?
You tell me, or he should tell us. So that's the way you engage. If you say somebody is being shielded, you say Mr. Ampoma is a man who got the Bulgarian embassies evicted. He went and pulled the building down. He did this, he did that, he did that. And on the basis of that, I think that he ought to have been sanctioned, and yet he's not being sanctioned. Look, I have the report here. I mean, I can go through it with you. I think my recollection of Ampoma's role in this whole thing is the fact that he's a beneficiary of the will of Mr. Leighton also. I'm not sure. I have to check the report again. It's a 149-page report. I think that is his involvement. In fact, when we finish this interview, I'll look at it closely. That he's a beneficiary of Mr. Leighton's will. But Mr. Hagan is being asked to be sanctioned because Mr. Hagan is the executor of the will. And if you understand the law of will, you will realize that the person who takes the legal steps to grant benefit, some benefit to the beneficiaries is the executor. So if you make your will and you make me the executor, you make your children the beneficiaries. I'm the one to take all the various steps, including applying for probate and this and that to get your children the beneficiaries to benefit from the estate. I'm the manager of the estate. So the litigation, in fact, you will not even sue the beneficiaries, you will sue the executor. So Mr. Hagan, who went through the process to get the title of the Bulgarians withdrawn and this and that, is the man who's been rightly, in my view, singled out or flagged for sanctioning. If Mr. Ampoma is a beneficiary, he is a beneficiary. He doesn't get involved in the processes of giving effect to the will. But that said, look, I've had interaction with Honorable Ablakwa, and I've told him, look, if you have anything more than we all know, let us know. This vague propagandist, political, empty statements you issue is a big cover-up of what is that? So it's all grammar.
There's a quote that he proposed to lift from the report about the involvement of Ms. Edu Ampoma, in which he said, quote, that since it said in the report, quote, since the registration of the assignment of Dr. Yao Edu Ampoma is found, as indicated in the sole and correct report, to have been improperly obtained, the ministry has further directed the Lands Commission to take the necessary steps to withdraw consent granted to the said assignment and registration of the interests of Dr. Yao Edu Ampoma. Is this? Do you recognize that?
But how does Mr. Ampoma become culpable in that? If I assign interest in land to you, if I, Bulgarian embassy land, if I assign the interest to you, Evans Mensah, and even assuming that I assign it to you for valuable consideration, and it turned out that my title which I'm assigning to you, or my interest which I'm assigning to you, was fraudulently or wrongly procured, how do you become culpable? You, the assignee, how do you become culpable? I'm the assigner. I have a bar of gold, and I give the bar of gold to you. It turned out that the bar of gold, I improperly acquired it, or I improperly procured it. How do you, the man who receives the gold, become culpable?
Is the beneficiary of an illegal act?
Well, that's another matter altogether in criminal law. But I'm saying, but even that, if you can plead innocence, it's a good defense. Even that, if you can plead innocence and it is established that you are totally innocent of the fraudulent transaction which you become a beneficiary of.
But have we established that he's innocent?
But I'm saying, just even on the face of it tells you how whacked the interpretation is. My friend, and that's why I'm saying, I mean, except if it is for politics. If it's just for politics, then it's fine. For him to accuse me of a cover-up is the most, for me, it's very outrageous. Because I'm telling you on my honor, between you and this matter, I don't know anything about it. I don't know the people involved. In many events, I didn't conduct the investigations. Is he suggesting that Justice Oforiatta can be manipulated to cover up Justice Oforiatta? You should check out the standing of Justice Oforiatta very well, and his pedigree. When I inaugurated him, after we finished, I pulled him on the side and said to him again, even though I have absolute confidence in his integrity, I said, my Lord, I'm pleading with you that I need this matter totally above board with the full facts. And he said, of course, you don't have to say it. And that is the right response I expected from him, because I know you to be a man of enormous integrity. So the Okujetos of this world, they want power, He's very obsessed about winning elections and becoming a minister and all of that. So anything goes. You will go on and on and on and on. They never stop.
There's a question about why the sole inquirer never spoke directly to the Bulgarian ambassador himself. Has he explained why that didn't happen?
I will find out. I have to find out. It may be a logistical issue, I'm sure. I'll find out. But they have a consular general here. Did he speak to the consular general?
Yes, he spoke to the consular.
But if he spoke to the consular, why must he speak to the Bulgarian ambassador?
But ambassador, from what I understand, requested to be heard directly.
Evans, hold on. Do the Bulgarian embassy have a consular general here?
They do.
Did the sole inquirer speak to the Bulgarian, the consular general?
From what I understand, he did.
Then you obviously understand the privity of relationship between an ambassador who has concurrent accreditation to a country and the consular general. The consular general is more like he's a representative of the ambassador in situ in the country. That is a fact. So if the sole inquirer is speaking to the consular general, what is it that the ambassador wanted to tell the sole inquirer that he couldn't have his consular general informed?
Well, the interest of getting to the heart of the matter and the truth. If the ambassador said, I want to be heard.
How did he say that? We have to check that out as well.
Okujeto suggests that he did.
Please, I'm not too sure Okujeto is credible enough. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure it's credible enough. I think he's done too many things in his public life which has discredited him a lot, including this matter, where he's just on a frolic of his own and just politicking all his way through. This is, with the greatest of respect, in all humility, this is serious governance issues. This is serious governance issues which has implications on the diplomatic community of our country, Ghana's standing in the international community. He doesn't seem to be patriotic enough to care about Ghana's flag, where it is risen to. You do politics with any and everything, concoct matters up, just so that Ghana's image is lowered, so that the elections will become easier for them. That is not what motivates me as a young politician. I'm looking at the common good. I'm looking at the public good.
I know he's your
and
friend.
all that, of course, is my very friend.
And he suggest to you that you're imputing motives to him that are simply unfair.
They are not unfair. They are correct. They are not unfair. I think he's just politicking. They are not unfair at all. I'll say that to his face. If he was here, that's what I'll tell him. They are not unfair. I think he's just politicking. I think he's just engaged in petty politics for just political point without a basis. If he has any firm solid grounds and he puts it on the table, we will look at it. And from the very get-go, he knows that I've kept him informed every step of the way, just as I've done with the foreign minister. It is because I respect the contours of governance. He's a ranking member for foreign affairs and he's entitled to some level of briefing. I've kept him informed and I've given him all a million times assurance that this will be above board, and this matter has been dealt with above board. It's been transparent. It's beyond reproach. We are dealing with it dispassionately. In any event, the report that has been done, look at the report and the steps I've taken. The steps I've taken very much injures the private developer. The private developer is taking a big hit. His project is being stalled. He's put up a 3 or 5 story building as we speak. I've said that no more development on that property. No more development on that property. You know what implications it will have for him in terms of his business? But excuse me to say, I couldn't be bothered. I'm just doing what is right. I've put a hold on the development of the property. That's number 1. Number 2, I've asked that the title, which was the assignment, which was registered in favor of Mr. Mpoma, that title, the consent the Lands Commission gave, should be withdrawn. I've said so. So what Mr. Mpoma had with the Lands Commission, I've withdrawn it. I've taken it out. He doesn't have it. Not a single punitive measure is being meted out against the Bulgarian embassy. Not a single punitive measure. Because we don't have to, based on the facts, based on the information. And also, the background to this matter is all been laid out clearly. And in the end, justice and fairness will be done. And it is being done. So to make this outlandish and totally ridiculous claim of a cover-up is totally dishonorable.
In the meantime, for the Bulgarian representatives in Ghana, what happens to where they operate from? Is there a temporary arrangement to accommodate the embassy?
They don't have a mission, but that's not even that doesn't fall within my purview. That's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yes, I'm dealing with a landed property, where diplomatic. If it was between you and Mr. Hagan, it will still be a matter that we will be involved in at the level of Lands Commission and records and so on and so forth. But whether the Bulgarian embassy has a place they stay and the rest, I think is a matter for the Foreign Ministry. But I know that they don't have a full embassy presence here in Ghana. They cancelled they withdrew their embassy from Ghana, I think a while ago. They are now based, I think, in Nigeria. What they have here is a consular general. Whether or not the consular general requires building infrastructure from the government, that's another matter that the diplomat and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will have to examine.
And indeed, we will take another break. And when I return, we will talk about the Apeti explosion. The minister is on record to have said that the reconstruction will begin. Government was devoting resources immediately to make the lives of the people who were affected easier. What's the status of that? We'll get into that after the break. And thank you for staying with us. My guest is still the Lands and Natural Resources Minister. We've talked about the Achimota forest conversation and controversy. We've talked about the Bulgarian embassy's demolition. Mr. Jinapo, let's talk about one of the biggest, I guess, tragedies you've had to deal with. I mean, in your short time as a minister, the Apeti explosion. What's the latest on there? I remember you speaking quite forcefully about the government commitment to redevelop the place and invest in it. Where are you with making that promise a reality for the people?
Yeah, so Evans, yes, you're right. That incident was truly tragic, and indeed it was totally unexpected. A lot of work has been done about it. You know, we've been dealing with the matter from a 2 or 3 prong approach. The first one being the initial containment, which was to give the victims some relief. And then we moved into the investigations and the regulatory framework, where we set up a committee to look at the whole mining sector regime of our country and the regulations and safety measures and all of that. All of those things have been completed and they are being implemented as we speak now. There's the other part of it which has to deal with how we resettle the victims, and I'm very happy to report my deputy minister, who is responsible for lands and forestry, Honorable Benito Owusubio, has done such an excellent work. He's been totally tireless on this matter. I mean, at the ministry here, we call him Honorable Apieti. You know, he's been there almost like 20 times. He is the chairman of the Reconstruction Committee, which is drawn from LUSPA, the Ghana Institute of Architects, and several other state institutions. And they are doing an excellent work. I'm very happy to report, for instance, that the victims have been temporarily resettled. We liaise with a company called FGR, who had put up some buildings for resettling a community called Dumasi. Excuse me, I had to speak to the boss of that company and to crave his indulgence to temporarily give us their facility. But the buildings had not been roofed and there were no windows. So we moved and we've done all of that. We've relocated the victims. The report...
Which area is this?
This is not too far from my PhD itself.
Okay.
And the report I continue to receive, is that by and large, life for the victims is reasonably okay. I should say so cautiously, and that it is much better than the tents in which they live, because in the tent they were at the mercy of the weather, and here they seems to be reasonably housed. You know,
so they move from the tent now.
Yeah, they move from the tent, and God willing, I'll be visiting the place very soon. Thankfully, working in close collaboration with the Minister for Roads, who has been very cooperative and who has been very proactive. We've been able to get a contractor who is going to very soon, in a matter of days, not weeks, you know, who is going to move to site to begin to work on the roads and the layout and the drainage system. It is only when we finish with that we will be able to begin the construction of the houses. But on the front of the houses, there also a considerable amount of work has been done. They've done the architectural works, they've done the detailed structural works. I think they've got a consultant in place also. I think they are now at the stage of, and then they put the buildings into lots, say lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, and so on and so forth. And they are now in the process of selecting contractors who will move to site after the roads and drainage are completed to begin building the houses. So all in all, I think we are very much on course. It's a very ambitious undertaking. It's a very Herculean undertaking, no two ways about that. But systematically, block by block, we are making a very bold effort to build this community, to be able to realize the instructions and vision of President Akufo-Addo to build this community into a modern, green, Ghanaian, small town community. So we're working on that. The little challenge we have, though, I should tell you, is that we haven't been able to raise as much funds as we to be able to complete this work. My auntie, Madam Joyce Ayi, who has been so gracious and who has been tireless in this effort, has raised some money, but it's not enough. The estimates they've put before me actually suggest that we are just about halfway through. So Evans, do contribute yourself. You have to make a contribution.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, the president did too. I remember. At the
but you have to.
I should.
I will make sure the secretary will cost you.
I should take it. But I was going to on that course. I was going to come to that because everything you said you've done now. Do we know yet how much it's going to cost you and all, and what it cost you?
Now we do. We do know how much it's going to cost. I don't have it offhand, but they will hold a press conference in the not too distant future to tell the country how much it's going to cost us, how much we have received, and how much more we need to be able to complete the work. But the good news also is that what we have, at least we can start. Yes.
The companies involved, when the report came out, they met you, accepted culpability, and if actually committed to pay some monies. Have they done any? Have they released any of the funds they promised?
I think they are on schedule. I think so. I mean, I'll have to check, but I think they are on schedule. And as you know, on the instructions of the president is instructed that those funds be dedicated towards the construction of the Apieti community. So I think that is very much on course.
And you're going to follow through to make sure that happens.
Oh yes, of course, certainly.
In terms of sanctions, though, because it has to come down to and I know you ordered an entire review of the entire value chain of mining to ensure that safety is being complied with, and you submitted the report to Parliament, and the questions was why don't you publish it? I remember your response was you've asked for a broader holistic review, and that what you have now will be from part of that, and that you could now publish. Where are you in doing that?
That is all done. The report has been given, presented by Professor Amankwa, the Vice Chancellor of University of Mines, and we are implementing that.
You're implementing that? Oh yes. That's a review of the mining sector
safety regime. We are far on that one. We are far ahead of it. Yeah.
Okay. So are you going to be publishing the report then for the public? Because that was the main concern, so that we could also the public can check and make sure that it's not repeating itself.
But it's all been put out. The various regulations we have agreed upon, all of it has been published. I can give you a copy before you leave. Yeah.
But in terms of sanctions, we haven't had anybody sanctioned, prosecuted for what happened. There should be that. I mean, when the BP oil happened,
there was a police investigation. Maybe you should follow up on that.
So the police is taking a criminal dimension. Sure. But as far as you were concerned, your internal regulatory breaches, you look
and a lot of reforms has been put in place, and a lot of measures have been put in place to forestall the recurrence of such a tragic incident. Yeah.
Okay. So now the transportation of ammunitions.
So for instance, one of the things we have done, which is very, very, very significant, the transportation of explosives, is very significant, which is that ammonium and nitrate are not to be transported together. In the past, they were transported together. They were transported, and there was a partition of a sort, and it is when they mix that it becomes that explosive. We have insisted, based on Professor Amankwa's report, that these ingredients for putting together explosives be transported separately. So have we also said that the distance, as much as possible, these explosives be mixed at the mine operation site. I mean, it's a whole gamut of measures we've come up with. I think about 16 or so different measures, interventions, which we've made following the Apieti incident to ensure that the mining sector is as safe as it can be. We always have to keep our fingers crossed, because in these matters you can't be foolproof. But I think that we've put in as much measures as are reasonable to keep the sector safe.
Finally, last year you planted 5 million trees.
Yes. And this year we're going to plant 20 million, God willing, on June 10th.
What happened to the 5 million, by the way?
Well, the report I have, and I've toured the country and looked at a good number of them. I think the Forestry Commission is indicating about 80% of them have survived, and that is quite impressive. And this year we have put in place a lot more. We've learned lessons from last year. We've put in place a lot more measures which will make this year even much better, and which will give us a much higher success rate and if you want maturity rate, a rate that survival rate, really, that's the word I'm looking for, which will give us a much better survival rate. So yes, so this year's June Green Ghana Day on June 10th. Please, all of us, we have to come on board.
Because June 10th is just
and I'm going to do my planting in Achimota forest.
The last time you did that thing at home with your family?
Yeah, I did in the house. I did at Jubilee House with the president, and I did one here at the ministry.
Yeah.
This time around, if I'm even going to see if I can lobby the president to do his planting in Achimota forest.
Just to show people that you really want to protect the forest.
Ghana's Achimota forest is
intact. and that is on the June 10th.
June 10th, Friday, June 10th.
Okay, so which is really just around the corner.
Very much so.
Yeah, but that costs money. I mean, how are you funding this?
Yeah, it costs
you have to buy the seedlings.
It's a lot. I mean, we're trying to get corporate Ghana to come on board, the religious organizations, faith-based organizations, some climate action groups, environmentalists and all of that. So it's a real mobilization. It's not been easy, as you can imagine. I've had to meet all kinds of groups, and next year I'm actually going on a full blitz of meeting various stakeholders to try and rally all of them together so that we can get these 20 million trees planted. And it's a responsibility for all of us. It calls for a national collective action. People like you all are called upon. Donate some airtime, promote it on your show. It will all help.
Absolutely. And that's the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Minister Samuel Abu Jinapo. Thank you very much for joining us on PM Express.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.